battlefield was silent after the storm of fire. Smoke curled over broken metal, shattered ships, and the bodies of soldiers who had fought for a cause no one could remember clearly anymore. A lone human soldier walked through the wreckage, with heavy boots crunching on ash and debris. His name was Darius, and he was one of the few who had survived the Baron's final assault. The war had ended, but the peace felt hollow, as if the silence itself was waiting to strike again. Darius had fought for years across planets and under skies filled with burning ships. He had learned not to trust easy victories, and not to believe that anything given freely came without a hidden cost. That was why, when the Baron's men surrendered and delivered a large wooden chest as their final tribute, he felt unease in his stomach. They called it a gift, a sign of surrender, but the way they smiled while handing it over made his blood run cold. The chest was heavy, bound with iron, and marked with strange carvings that glowed faintly under the dim light of the ruined camp. It sat in the middle of the commander's tent, drawing the eyes of every soldier who passed. Some whispered it was treasure stolen from 100 worlds. Others swore it contained cursed weapons left behind by the Baron's ancestors. But Darius, who had seen too much of war's tricks, stayed quiet. He waited, watching the chest like a predator waits for its prey to reveal itself. That night, when the fires had burned low and most of the camp had fallen asleep, Darius slipped into the tent. The gift still sat there, silent and unmoving. His hand brushed across the wood, feeling the deep scratches and the strange heat that pulsed from within. It felt alive, like something inside was waiting to be released. He thought of leaving it, sealed, burning it even, but his instincts pushed him forward. Curiosity was dangerous, but so was ignorance. With a deep breath, he unlatched the iron locks one by one. The creak of metal echoed louder than he expected, and his heart pounded, as if he were about to step back onto the battlefield. The final lock gave way and the lid opened slowly. At first he expected gold or weapons or perhaps the bones of fallen enemies, but instead his eyes froze on something he could not have imagined. Inside the chest sat a girl. Her skin was emerald green, glowing faintly under the light, and her long red hair spilled around her like fire. She looked young, her features both alien and beautiful, her sharp ears and glowing eyes unlike anything human. Armor of intricate metal and leather clung to her body, marking her as someone important, someone powerful. She stared at him without fear, without blinking, as though she had been waiting for this moment. Darius staggered back, his mind racing. She was not chained, not bound, but sitting upright as though she had chosen to stay inside. The thought chilled him. Why would the Baron give such a being as a gift? She did not look like a prisoner nor a slave. She looked like a weapon wrapped in flesh. Her lips curved into the faintest of smiles, and for a moment he felt as if the air itself tightened around him. He tried to speak, but no words came. She tilted her head, studying him the way a predator studies prey. Yet her eyes softened after a heartbeat, and she whispered something in a language he did not know. The sound was like music, haunting and sharp, and it sank into his mind like an echo he could not shake. He felt the weight of the war pressing down on him again, heavier than ever. This was no treasure. This was no gift. The Baron had not surrendered. He had passed his curse into human hands, and Darius, standing before the girl in the chest, realized that the true war might only just be beginning. The camp awoke the next morning to a quiet tension. Rumors spread fast, carried by whispers and nervous glances toward the commander's tent. No one dared approach it, but all knew something was wrong. The chest, the so-called gift, had not been seen since the night before. Only Darius knew the truth, and even he could not put it into words. The girl inside was not something he could explain. She was alive, dangerous and beautiful in a way that unsettled him more than any weapon he had faced. He had not slept. He had sat by the chest until dawn, watching her breathe slowly, her glowing eyes closing as if in rest. She never moved to attack, never made a sound after her strange whisper the night before. It was as if she knew he was too afraid to act first. When the sun rose, he closed the chest again, though he knew it could not contain her if she chose to leave. The soldiers outside saw him carry it out with his face pale and his hands shaking, but none asked questions. The general of their forces, a tired man who had lost too many battles, ordered the chest to be delivered to the High Council back on Earth. "If it is treasure," he said, "let the council use it. If it is a curse, let them bear the weight." His words were heavy, but Darius caught the flicker of fear in his eyes. Even the general did not want to open it. That alone told Darius everything he needed to know. They prepared a transport ship, broken but functional, patched together with the remains of wreckage. Darius was assigned as guardian of the chest. Some joked he was lucky, chosen to guard treasure instead of cleaning the battlefield. But others saw his silence and the haunted look in his eyes and knew the truth. Whatever was in that chest was not gold. As they left the ruined planet behind, the silence of space pressed down heavier than the silence of the battlefield. Darius sat across from the chest in the small cargo bay, his weapon resting against his knee. The hum of the engines was the only sound. But then, he heard it again. A voice, soft and melodic, like a whisper carried through water. His eyes shot to the chest. It was closed, locked, but the sound seeped from within. He rose slowly, hand on his weapon, and stepped closer. The whisper grew louder, shaping into words he could almost understand. His mind filled with images. Vast forests lit by glowing rivers, towers made of crystal, skies burning with strange stars. A world he had never seen, but one that felt painfully real. She was speaking to him, not with her lips, but with her thoughts. His hand hovered over the lock. Every instinct told him to keep it closed, to resist. But the voice was not threatening. It was pleading. It carried a sadness that cut deeper than any blade. With shaking fingers, he opened the chest once more. She sat there just as before, her eyes glowing softly in the dim light of the ship. But this time she spoke in his language. "Do not fear me," she said. Her voice was calm, gentle yet strong enough to hold his full attention. "I was not given. I was abandoned." Darius stared, struggling to find his words. "Who are you?" he asked finally. Her eyes held his, and for a moment he thought he saw centuries of pain reflected in them. "I am not your enemy," she said. "But if you keep me here, I will become one." The air between them grew heavy, charged with something beyond his understanding. He realized then that the Baron had not lost the war at all. The Baron had simply passed his weapon into their hands, a weapon with a will of her own. And now, Darius stood at the edge of a choice that could change everything, whether to keep her bound as a prisoner or to set her free and face whatever truth she carried. The cargo ship drifted quietly through space, its patched hull groaning under the strain of the journey. Inside the dimly lit bay, Darius sat across from the alien girl, unable to take his eyes off her. She was not chained, not bound, and yet she did not try to leave the chest. Her posture was calm, her expression unreadable, as if she were letting him decide what came next. That alone unsettled him more than if she had lunged at his throat. Her words echoed in his mind again and again. "I was not given, I was abandoned." Darius wanted to demand answers, but each time he opened his mouth, the weight of her gaze silenced him. She was no ordinary prisoner. The way she carried herself, even in silence, reminded him of commanders, of people who were used to being obeyed, without question, and yet here she sat waiting for him to ask. Finally, he found his voice. "Who abandoned you?" His tone was harsher than he intended, but it was the only way he could mask the unease building inside him. Her glowing eyes softened, and for the first time she looked away. "The Baron," she said quietly. "He called me his secret. His weapon, but in truth I was his mistake." The word struck Darius harder than any bullet. A weapon. The Baron had unleashed horrors on countless worlds, but if she was something he considered too dangerous to keep, then what had they brought? Aboard. Darius leaned forward, his hand tightening around his rifle. "What are you?" The girl met his eyes again, and though her voice was calm, There was a strength in it that shook him. I am not a treasure, not a tool. My people once ruled beyond these stars, long before humans first left their homeworld. The Baron found what was left of us and tried to shape me into something I was never meant to be. When I refused to obey, he sealed me away. You were not meant to find me. You were meant to fear me. The hum of the ship seemed louder after her, words as though the metal itself was listening. Darius's pulse quickened. He had seen monsters. He had fought machines that tore soldiers apart, but nothing in his life had spoken with such quiet certainty. He wanted to believe she was lying, that this was just another trap. And yet there was no malice in her tone, only sorrow. The girl's eyes drifted to the stars visible through the small window of the bay. My world is gone, burned, my people scattered. The Baron took what little remained and twisted it. He wanted me to lead his armies, to break worlds, for him, but I would not. She closed her eyes for a moment as if gathering strength. Now he has given me to you. He hopes you will do what he could not. Use me. Darius felt a cold shiver run down his spine. His commander's words came back to him. If it is a curse, let the council bear the weight. The council had no idea what they were about to receive. A girl who claimed to be the last of her kind, abandoned by a tyrant who had lost everything but still found a way to poison his enemies. He stood, pacing the narrow bay. Every instinct told him to treat her as a threat. But another part of him, a part buried deep after years of war, whispered something different. She was not chained. She had not attacked. She had spoken of loss, not conquest, and if her story was true, then she had suffered more than most soldiers ever could. He stopped and looked back at her. She sat still, waiting, her fiery hair catching the dim light. For the first time, Darius saw not a weapon, not a trap, but someone who had been left behind in the ruins of war, just like him. Why tell me this? He asked quietly. Her gaze met his, steady and unflinching. Because, she said, you must choose. You can deliver me to your council and let them repeat the Baron's mistakes, or you can trust me and perhaps end this cycle before it begins again. The weight of her words settled over him like chains. Darius realized then that the gift was not a chest or a prisoner. The gift was the choice itself, placed in his hands, and the wrong decision could doom not just his world but all of them. The journey through space stretched on, but the air inside the ship grew heavier with each passing hour. Darius felt like he was carrying a storm inside his chest, torn between what he should do and what he wanted to believe. The council was waiting on Earth, expecting him to deliver the Baron's so-called gift. His orders were clear. Yet the girl's words gnawed at him like a wound that would not close. He had not told the others what he had discovered. The soldiers on board still believed the chest carried treasure or spoils of war. To them, Darius was simply guarding a box. Only he knew that inside sat a girl with eyes like fire and a story older than their history. Sometimes when the ship grew quiet, he swore he could feel her presence pressing against his thoughts, a gentle but unshakable reminder that she was still there, waiting. One night, unable to hold back any longer, he returned to the cargo bay. The chest was open now, though he had locked it before. She sat calmly outside it, her green skin glowing faintly in the dim light, her hair spilling across her shoulders like a river of fire. She looked at him as though she had been expecting him. You should not be out, he muttered, weapon half raised. Her lips curved into a faint smile. You did not lock me in. You only thought you did. Darius's grip tightened. Then, why haven't you escaped? Because if I wanted to leave, she said softly, nothing on this ship could stop me. I stayed because you have not made your choice. Her calmness unsettled him more than if she had attacked. He lowered the weapon, his eyes scanning her for any sign of deceit. Show me, he said finally. If you are what you claim, if you're more than the Baron's weapon, prove it. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then she lifted her hand, A faint hum filled the room and the air shimmered. Slowly, small shards of broken metal from the floor rose into the air, floating weightlessly. Sparks of light danced around her fingers, bright and pure, nothing like the cruel machines the Baron had unleashed in war. The shards twisted together, shaping into a flower, fragile and beautiful, glowing softly before falling apart again. Darius's breath caught in his throat. It was power, undeniable, but it was not destruction. It was creation. She had made something from broken pieces. "Why show me this?" he whispered. "Because you must understand," she replied. Her eyes glowed brighter now, her voice steady and strong. "I was not made for war. I was made to restore what was lost. The Baron tried to twist me into his weapon, but he could never change what I am. That is why he abandoned me. And that is why your council will try to claim me." The weight of her words crushed him. He could already see it. The council, greedy for advantage, would not see a person before them. They would see a tool, a weapon, to end all wars, and just like the Baron, they would chain her until she broke. He stepped back, torn apart by duty. His whole life had been service, orders, obedience. But for the first time, those things felt hollow. He thought of the broken worlds he had marched, across the lifeless cities left behind, the children who never grew old. All because someone always wanted a stronger weapon. And here he was, holding the strongest one yet. Her eyes softened as she watched him. "You are not like him," she said quietly. "You carry pain, but you do not carry hate. That is why the choice is yours, Darius. Not your council's, not your commander's. Yours." Darius felt his chest tighten. The thought of betraying, his orders clawed at him, but so did the thought of delivering her into chains. He realized then that no matter what choice he made, nothing would ever be the same. The Baron's war was over, but another battle had just begun, one inside his own heart. The ship's corridors buzzed with unease. Soldiers were restless, their nerves stretched thin after too many battles and too many losses. They were heading home, but the weight of the Baron's war still clung to them. And now, whispers of strange sounds coming from the cargo bay had begun to spread. Darius noticed the way they glanced at him when he passed. Some looked curious, others suspicious. A few had even asked what he was guarding so carefully, but he brushed them off with gruff replies. He could feel the pressure building like a storm on the horizon. If they discovered the truth, there would be no going back. Inside the cargo bay, the alien girl sat quietly as if untouched by the chaos around her. She never moved unless he entered, and then she would rise, her glowing eyes locking onto him, like a flame drawn to fuel. She seemed calm, but Darius knew calm could be more dangerous than fury. One evening, the ship's engineer, a wiry man named Harker, approached Darius with a smirk. "You spend a lot of time in there," he said, jerking his chin toward the bay door. "What's the council paying you to guard, eh? Gold? Secrets? Or something you don't want the rest of us to see?" Darius held his stare. "My orders aren't your concern." Harker laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Orders? Funny how you're the only one who's ever allowed near it. Some of us are starting to wonder if you're hiding something." The words twisted in Darius's gut, but he forced himself to stay silent. He knew soldiers. He knew how quickly suspicion could turn to violence. If they found her, they wouldn't hesitate. To them, she would be a weapon, or worse, an enemy. That night, when the others slept, Darius confronted the girl again. "They're starting to notice," he said, his voice low. "You can't keep doing whatever it is you're doing. They'll hear. They'll see." Her head tilted slightly, her crimson hair catching the dim light. "I have not left this room," she said calmly. "If they suspect, it is because they already fear. Fear grows even when there is no cause." Her words made sense, but they offered no comfort. Darius rubbed his temples, frustration burning in his chest. "Then help me. If they come in here and see you, it's over. They'll kill you. Or worse, they'll take you. Her eyes softened, and for the first time she reached out, her hand brushing lightly against his arm. The touch was warm, steady, not threatening. Would you let them? She asked quietly. The question pierced him deeper than any blade. He had no answer. The following day, the pressure snapped. Harker returned with 2 soldiers, their boots heavy against the metal floor as they approached the cargo bay. Darius intercepted them at the door, his hand resting on the butt of his rifle. What do you think you're doing? Darius demanded. Counsel, didn't put you in charge of secrets, Harker sneered. We've bled enough to deserve a look at what's inside. If you've been lying to us, we'll know. The soldiers at his side shifted uneasily, but their eyes carried the same suspicion. Darius's heart pounded. If he stepped aside, they would see her. If he resisted, he would brand himself a traitor before they even reached Earth. For a moment, no one moved. The hum of the ship filled the silence like a drumbeat. Then the bay door slid open, not by his hand, not by theirs, but on its own. The soldiers froze. Inside, the girl stood tall, her glowing eyes fixed on them. She was not cowering, not hiding. She radiated power in every movement, her presence filling the space with something that felt larger than life. One soldier stumbled back, his face pale. What? What is that? He whispered. Darius stepped forward, his rifle raised, but not at her, at them. She's not your concern, he said firmly. His voice carried a steel he had not felt in years. No one touches her. The soldiers stared at him in shock. In that moment, the lines were drawn. Darius had chosen, whether he admitted it, to himself or not. The silence after Darius's words was sharp enough to cut. The soldiers stood frozen, torn between fear of the glowing girl and anger at the man who now pointed a rifle at his own comrades. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Harker sneered, his voice trembling but loud enough to fill the corridor. You've lost it, Darius. You've let the Baron's poison rot your mind. Step aside, or you'll share his fate. The 2 soldiers beside him raised their weapons slowly. Their eyes betrayed their fear, but their loyalty to orders held them steady. Darius tightened his grip on his rifle. His heart pounded, but his voice was calm. If you fire, none of us will live to see Earth. She is not your enemy, but push this and you'll make her one. Behind him, the alien girl stepped forward. She moved with grace, her presence filling the space like a tide rising against the shore. The faint glow of her markings pulsed brighter, casting strange light across the walls. The soldiers faltered, their fingers twitching on their triggers. Enough, she said softly, her voice echoing with a weight beyond human understanding. The word rolled through them like thunder. The air shimmered faintly, and suddenly the rifles in the soldiers' hands grew hot, too hot to hold. They dropped them with curses, the metal clattering to the floor. Sparks leapt from the weapons as though they had been touched by fire. Harker stumbled back, eyes wide. Witch, he spat, his voice shaking. She's the Baron's weapon, and you're protecting her. Darius didn't lower his weapon, his voice came steady, hardened by years of war. Better her than you. The soldiers retreated, dragging Harker with them, but Darius knew it wasn't over. Word would spread through the ship like wildfire. He had shown his hand. From this moment on, he was no longer their comrade. He was their enemy. When the bay door sealed again, Darius finally lowered his rifle. His shoulders felt heavy, the weight of what he had done pressing down on him. He turned to the girl who stood calm and unshaken. You didn't have to do that, he muttered, her eyes fixed on him. If I had not, you would be dead. They would have killed you to reach me, you know this. He couldn't argue. She was right. Still, the fear in the soldier's eyes lingered in his mind. They would never forgive what they had seen. Soon, they would come for both of them. Hours later, the alarm sounded. Heavy boots pounded through the corridors as the crew mobilized. Darius could hear shouts. Orders barked through comms. They were coming. He loaded his rifle, hands steady despite the storm inside him. He had fought enemies on 100 battlefields, but never his own people. The girl watched him quietly. "You cannot win against them all," she said. "Maybe not," he admitted. "But I can buy time. Enough for you to get away." Her eyes softened, but her voice carried strength. "I will not leave you. If you fall, I fall." The door shook, as fists hammered against it. Metal groaned under the weight of crowbars and cutting tools. Sparks rained as they tried to force their way inside. Darius took position behind a crate, rifle aimed at the entrance. His heart was steady now, his purpose clear. He was no longer fighting for orders, for counsel, or even for survival. He was fighting for her. The door burst open in a shower of sparks. Soldiers stormed in, weapons raised. Darius fired, shots cracking through the bay. The first soldier fell, another staggered back with a cry, but there were too many. Then the air changed. A hum filled the bay, rising until it shook the walls. Light flared around the girl, bright and blinding. The soldiers froze, their faces twisted in awe and terror. She raised her hand and the ground itself seemed to tremble. The rifles of the crew ripped from their hands, torn into the air as if pulled by invisible strings. Metal bent and twisted, collapsing into useless heaps. The soldiers cried out, stumbling, backward, their courage breaking. Darius lowered his rifle slowly, watching her with wide eyes. He had seen her power before, but never like this. This was not just creation. This was force enough to crush armies. The soldiers fled, dragging the wounded with them, leaving the bay door half melted and smoking. Silence fell again, broken only by the pounding of Darius's heart. The girl lowered her hand, the glow fading. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw the truth in them. She was not just someone abandoned. She was something the galaxy itself had tried to forget, and now she was his responsibility. The ship limped closer to Earth, but inside its walls the air was poisoned by suspicion and fear. The crew no longer looked at Darius as one of their own. They avoided him in the corridors, whispers trailing behind him like shadows. Some carried bruises from the brief fight in the cargo bay. Others stared at him as if he had already betrayed them all, but none dared confront him again. They had seen what the alien girl could do. Her power was more than firepower or strength. It was something that broke the courage of seasoned soldiers. They could not fight her, and they knew it. Darius felt the weight of every step he took. Soon they would reach Earth. Soon the Council would take her. He had lived his whole life by orders, believing structure and loyalty were the only way to survive. Now those same values were dragging him toward a decision that threatened to destroy him. In the quiet of the cargo bay, she sat calmly, her glowing eyes fixed on him. The dim light reflected across her emerald skin, and for the first time he noticed how young she truly looked. Beneath the power, beneath the strange aura she carried, there was still someone who had lost everything. "You are afraid," she said softly. Darius gave a hollow laugh. "I've fought on 10 worlds, faced beasts that could tear through steel, and I was never afraid. But this," he gestured around them, to the bay, the ship, the stars. "This feels bigger than any war I've fought. If I make the wrong choice, it won't just be my life that breaks. It could be worlds." She tilted, her head studying him. "You already made your choice when you stood between me and your soldiers. The path you walk now cannot be turned back." Her words struck him because he knew they were true. The moment he had raised his weapon to protect her, he had crossed a line. His council would call him a traitor. His comrades already did. But he couldn't bring himself to regret it. Still, a doubt lingered. "What if they're right?" he asked quietly. "What if you are a weapon? What if by protecting you I'm dooming my people?" Her gaze did not waver. "Weapons destroy. I restore. The Baron twisted my gift, but even he could not erase what I am. You have seen it yourself." Darius thought of the flower she had shaped from broken metal, fragile and beautiful. He thought of the way she had torn rifles apart without killing, the men who held them, She had power, yes, but she had chosen restraint. That choice mattered more than anything. Still, the council would not see restraint. They would see only advantage. They would take her, dissect her, twist her, until she was nothing but another tool for their wars. The thought filled Darius with a bitterness he had not felt since the first day he'd been forced to pick up a rifle. The ship's comm crackled to life. Approaching Earth orbit, the pilot's voice announced, "Prepare for landing." The words hit Darius like a hammer. Time was up. He looked at her, and for the first time she looked uncertain. "They will not listen to me," she said softly. "If you give me to them, I will never leave their chains." The hum of the engines deepened as the planet grew larger in the viewport. Earth's blue oceans and sprawling cities filled the window, shining like a jewel in the darkness. For a moment, Darius saw it not as his home, but as another trap waiting to close around her. His fists clenched, his orders screamed, at him to obey, to deliver her, to let the council decide. But another voice, quieter yet stronger, rose inside him. The voice of every ruined battlefield he had walked, every innocent crushed under the weight of men who believed weapons were the answer. He turned to her. "If I do this," he said, "if I break everything I've ever lived by, then you need to promise me something." Her eyes glowed brighter, steady and unwavering. "Name it." "Promise me," he said, "that you won't let my people twist you into what the Baron wanted. Promise me you'll fight to stay yourself." For the first time she smiled, not faint, not sorrowful, but full, radiant. "I promise." The ship's engines roared. Earth filled the skies. Darius knew then that his choice had already been made. He would not deliver her, not to the council, not to anyone. The ship descended through the clouds of Earth, engines, trembling as it broke through the atmosphere. Soldiers strapped themselves in, their eyes avoiding Darius. The tension was thick enough to choke. Every one of them knew what waited below. The council, eager for the so-called gift the Baron had left behind. Darius sat across from the alien girl. She was calm, her crimson hair glowing faintly in the cabin lights, her emerald skin radiant, despite the fear pressing in from all sides. Her eyes never left his, steady, unyielding, as if to remind him that his choice was still his to make. When the ship landed, the bay doors opened to a line of armored council guards. Behind them stood robed figures, the highest authorities of Earth, their faces cold and unreadable. The general stepped forward, his voice booming. "Darius, bring us the Baron's gift." Every soldier turned to watch. Darius rose slowly, the weight of their stares pressing against his back. His rifle hung at his side, but his grip was iron. The girl stood beside him, unchained, unbound, her presence so commanding that even the guards shifted uneasily. He led her down the ramp, each step heavy. The council's eyes widened slightly at the sight of her, but none spoke. They had expected treasure, perhaps a weapon sealed in steel. What they saw was something far greater, something alive, beautiful, and dangerous. The head counselor stepped forward. "Remarkable," he said, his voice smooth as polished stone. "You have done well, soldier. Hand her over. We will decide her fate." The words twisted like a knife in Darius's chest. He had expected them, but hearing them aloud broke whatever thread of loyalty he had left. They did not see her as a person. They saw her as property. His voice rang out, steady, louder than he thought possible. "She's not yours." The guard shifted, rifles rising as gasps rippled through the gathered soldiers. The general's face darkened. "Darius, stand down. This is not your decision." Darius raised his rifle, not at the girl, not at the council, but at the ground between them. His stance was unshakable. "All my life I followed orders," he said, his voice carrying across the landing bay. "I obeyed, I fought, I killed. And for what? Empty victories, ruined worlds. Where I bled for was built on lies, not this time, not her." The girl's eyes glowed brighter, her aura filling the bay. She did not move, but her presence alone made the guards falter. Metal hummed faintly as their weapons trembled in their hands. The counselor sneered. You would betray your people. For her? For something not even human? Darius's voice thundered back. She's more human than any of you who sit in chains and call it power. The words cut through the air like a blade. The soldiers who had fought beside him shifted, uneasily, some lowering their rifles. They had seen the girl's restraint. They had seen her protect instead of destroy. And now they saw a man willing to sacrifice everything for her. The head counselor gestured sharply. Seize them both. The guards surged forward, but before they could reach him, light flared around the girl. The air trembled, weapons ripped from hands and twisted midair, collapsing into harmless shards. The guards stumbled back, shielding their faces. She stepped forward, her voice echoing like thunder. You will not chain me again. The bay shook as her power rolled outward, not as destruction, but as undeniable force. The counselors staggered, their robes whipping in the wind. Her presence stirred. For the first time, fear flickered in their eyes. Darius lowered his rifle. He no longer needed it. Her power, combined with his choice, had already broken the council's hold. Silence fell as the guards retreated, none daring to raise their weapons again. The counselors, pale and shaken, whispered among themselves but found no words to command. The tide had shifted. The girl turned to Darius, her eyes softening. You chose, she said gently. He met her gaze, his chest heavy but certain. I chose right. Together they walked from the landing bay, past soldiers who no longer looked at them as enemies but as something far greater, symbols of defiance against chains, against control, against the endless hunger for weapons. For the first time in years, Darius felt the weight of war lift from his shoulders. The true battle was over, not because he obeyed, but because he finally refused. And as the alien girl walked beside him, radiant and unbroken, he knew this was not the end of their story. It was the beginning.